This is Paul Ewing.
Hello.
He's been a teacher here for
This is my 19th year.
19th year. So give us a little bit of history on your background, where you've gone to college, and what your career choice was.
Okay, I went to the University of Toledo, got an undergraduate degree in Russian studies, had more history classes than anything else.
Right.
So I decided to get a master's in history. And part of my responsibility in that program at the University of Toledo was to be a teaching assistant. And yes.
Oh, cool. Interesting.
If you want to interrupt me anytime, feel free
Okay.
to, or give me a little sign because I tend to ramble.
That's
So,
fine.
when I say
Ramble away.
pause. So, as a teaching assistant, I had to lead a discussion of Western Civ students who met with the professors on Mondays and Wednesdays. It was team taught, so it was naturally designed to team teach here.
Right.
And I led the discussion group, and after I walked out of the first or second discussion group of 20 or 30 college students, I said to myself, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. I love this. I love teaching college. And so the second year of my graduate work there, the department chair offered me my own section.
Oh, neat.
In other words, he was extending to me the right to be a professor, if you will, to have my own section of college students. And for a person only working on a master's degree, I felt that was a great honor.
Right.
I loved it.
Right.
I mean, I think I did a pretty good job.
Right. So you were hired at Yavapai in what year?
1989.
1989. And what did you begin teaching then?
I started out, I was hired as the liberal studies instructor. That's the job I applied for. That's still my title. I was hired to teach Western Civ, and connections courses, the LSC,
Right.
Liberal Studies Core courses. But because there weren't enough courses in that area to fill up my load, I also continued to teach Philosophy 101, which I taught at Jackson Community College, which is where I got my experience as an adjunct. And they even had me teaching English 060 and English 100, which are kind of pre-English comp courses.
Right.
And also conversational Russian I taught.
Oh, neat.
Soviet history I taught a couple of times. So I've taught probably a third to half of the courses that are in the Connections Bank of courses. And I've team taught with more people at this school
Right.
than anybody else.
Right. Now, you discussed the LSC courses. I know as a student, I see that the LSC courses have been taken off of the requirements. Do you have anything to say about that?
That was part of a process that I would say was a political process that was going on at the college. There was a program review ongoing for liberal studies, and it was decided by the committee that was overseeing that process that the team teaching part of the liberal studies core was too costly, and because you have two teachers in the classroom as opposed to one, and so it was recommended that the liberal studies program be terminated as a team teaching program and reconstituted as something else, and that has now become the new Gen Ed 6-hour requirement.
Okay.
And I worked trying to, I worked intently as part of the LSE program for all the years that I was connected with it. I did put up a bit of a struggle as I saw that it was coming to an end. I fought the good fight, I lost, and I went on to help in the creation of the new program once the old program was gone.
So, 1989 Yavapai College, what was the campus like?
Oh, that's a great question. There was nothing here.
There was nothing.
The very building that you and I are sitting in now was not here, of course, because this is a new building.
Right.
But even the I building,
Not there.
not there. What used to be the Verde Library was not there, and the gym was not there. The H building was here, the G building was here, the A and B and the C buildings were here, and that was it. I remember one of my most vivid memories of the early campus was coming here on the weekends and seeing javelina eating the cactus out in front of the library.
Right.
And rattlesnakes were much more common. And also tarantulas would migrate across the campus at the right time of the year.
Right.
And jackrabbits and rabbits all over the yard. But now, because of the Del Webb development that's gone in on the east side of us here, there's a lot less wildlife, and I haven't heard a coyote howl for years.
Right, right. So, would you say, what was the student population like back then? As far as, obviously there were a lot less students attending Yavapai at the time, but would you say there was a change, there has been a change in study ethics of students over the years?
I think that may be changing a little bit with changing technologies, with the internet, but I want to say in general, no, that both the caliber and the type of students that we serve, which is non-traditional in many cases,
right.
not all, and their honesty and integrity and potential for academic excellence has, for me, from my vantage point, has been pretty solid. And in the latter point, I have to say it's been my privilege to work with some brilliant individuals, yourself included, over the years. I feel really, really lucky to have had that honor of working with these people here.
You know, I haven't necessarily had the opportunity to go to university, but I don't think I would have preferred to go to university right off the bat. Terrence Pratt said the same thing you said, in that he's had the privilege to work with so many, so many, I can't even think
talented,
brilliant students.
Enthusiastic,
exactly.
hardworking, dedicated.
And that's exactly what he said, and that's what I love about coming here, is that you see that in the majority of the teachers you take courses from, whereas at a university, motivations tend to change. But I want to know about your best memory at the college, whether it's, with a colleague or with something that you got to experience.
I've got it.
Okay, good.
I'll have to say that the penultimate experience of my Yavapai college career was being one of the faculty who served as a mentor, not so much a chaperone, on the honors trip to Greece and Italy in the spring of 1999. That was a Western Civ teacher's field trip of dreams.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine.
People said of me on that trip that I had this aura around my head. Now, I'm not real woo-woo, but they said that there was this light kind of blazing around me when I was there. Well, part of it is I'm half Greek. My mother was Greek. And so I was going back to the place where, in a sense, an important part of me, my mother, came from. And so there was that connection. And then there was all this studying I'd done on the Greeks and the Romans. And then I had and honor students. I mean, the most like yourself, the most talented of the talented to be with and to mentor. And I had a blast. I didn't get much sleep, but yet I was filled with energy. And it was clearly, without a doubt, the most amazing thing that I've ever done as a teacher, and it was really a wonderful just travel experience on its own. Brent Roberts put together this amazing itinerary. We never had a second. We were always doing something. And it was just great. Well, wait, we did have a day in Rome where we got to play, just go off on our own.
So what did you do?
Oh, I went and found the glasses that I'd lost the day before. There was almost a fight between one of our honor students and a tavern keeper.
Really?
Yeah, and I got between the two, and I told the honor student it's not worth a night in an Italian jail. Let's clear out of here. But in the meantime, I'd forgotten that I'd left my glasses on the bar. So on my day off, and this was a big deal for me because Rome is a huge city, and it's easy to get lost. And my colleagues have always been with me, but they gave me the job. They said, Paul, you really need to go out into Rome on your own and find your glasses. You need to grow up.
You need to grow up. Right.
So I did. And it was a strange situation because I got dropped off in the vicinity of the day's events before, and it was like a bad dream. I'd go up to a tavern that looked exactly like the place where I'd lost my glasses, and I'd get in the door and I would be shocked it wasn't it. And that happened 4 or 5 times until I got to the right place. And I learned a couple words in Italian. Mia occhiali means my glasses. And I said that to this guy, and he remembered me because he was the same person who had almost gotten into a fight.
Right.
And maybe this is not something the honors program wants to know about, but I avoided the trouble by intervening. And that was one of 2 instances. But the whole trip itself was just a phenomenal adventure, an odyssey, in 6 days.
Is it? That's how our New York trip was. It was just go, 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 go. And you come back and then you just kind of let it all sink in, you know?
It's still sinking.
Yeah, exactly. Now that was
in the spring of '99. And that was, I'd have to say, absolutely the top. There have been other high points, very close, but that was so unusual.
Right. Now keeping with this positive theme right now, what would you say is your favorite course to teach that you feel the students get the most out of and you as a teacher feel you can, impart knowledge the most?
I'd have to say it's the subject that I'm probably least qualified to teach. AIDS, a Modern Plague, the AIDS course. Number one, I think that what I'm teaching there is vitally important. It's about life and death.
Right.
And I come to that course with a certain energy and enthusiasm that is unique. Yet at the same time, as a historian, I'm able to see HIV and emerging viruses as part of the history story.
Right.
But I've also learned, as a team teacher, we team taught that class for the longest time, and I used to teach it over the 2-way interactive television system.
Oh, okay.
And over on the Prescott campus was Barry Golden, a very gifted and knowledgeable biologist. So for years, I listened to Barry's talk on microbiology of viruses and how in what particular ways the HIV virus gets in our body. So I learned so much from team teaching. And so when it came time that I didn't have a team anymore, I had the benefit of all that knowledge from other teachers that I could put into the AIDS class, teaching it by myself. And so I dummy up and study my microbiology books the day before I talk about the virus, and that's what the students get now.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, that seems to be one of the largest benefits of team teaching, is that you're not only getting, one aspect of the study, but you're getting, like you said, the microbiology portion, which really needs to be brought into it, and that's really interesting that you bring that up.
Also, I think when you have a team teaching situation, the students benefit in many ways, but one of the obvious ways they benefit to me is when I go into a situation where there are other teachers in the room or across the mountain on a TV system watching my performance, I'm very much aware of whether I'm prepared or not.
Right.
And I think the students get a higher caliber product because all those teachers they're not so much competing with each other as they want to be good teachers and with other teachers looking in.
Right.
So I think the students benefit from that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Plus they get different points of view.
Right.
And that encourages critical thinking, and that's the real important piece.
Right.
And that's what's lost when you take team teaching away, is the students lose that the dialogue. Because whenever I would teach with Jenny Chandesay, she would challenge me on points that I would make, and I would have to defend myself, argue, and so students are in the middle, in a sense, sorting it out, thinking for themselves, which is what we want them to do.
That is one of the most interesting things that I have found about being in college is the critical thinking. A lot of times in high school you are directed in the way you are to think, you are given handouts, you're given worksheets, you fill in the answers, and then you get into college and that critical thinking I know I've kind of struggled with, but it's an amazing opportunity to be able to experience that and to be able to develop yourself in that aspect, So let's go ahead and talk about probably your least favorite experience, just something that really left you unsettled.
Let me think about that for a moment.
I know it's probably hard to.
I might mention a couple.
That's fine.
One of my, I would have to say, first disconcerting experiences, and in that sense significant, was when I first arrived here and I attended my first faculty association meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat and listened to a discussion about that body of faculty representatives deciding how they were going to vote a vote of no confidence in the president of the college. Mm-hmm. And I thought, where on earth have I landed?
Right.
What kind of war zone is this? Why am I here? Because I was in the middle of a vote of no confidence, and I had no tenure. I was on probation for 3 years, and I thought, if I get involved in this, I could lose my job. So I felt very threatened by that. Mm-hmm. And very uncomfortable being in a situation where there was a vote of no confidence going on in the president. And that kind of anxiety stayed with me for a while. And I was encouraged, actually, not to get too political the first 3 years. And that was good advice.
Right.
That's one instance I can think of. Another was, I guess there's only been 2 presidents before Dr. Horton. Well, there was one interim president too, but it was, when I arrived here, it was Dr. Paul Walker, who was, in fact, voted no confidence. So a vote of no confidence was taken, the vote held, and he was out based on that vote. The other president was Dr. Daly, and it was something that she asked us to do that put me in a very uncomfortable spot. And you say negative experience. Sometimes out of negative experiences, we find something in ourselves that we didn't know was there. I want to say that Dr. Daly, the environment of the college under Dr. Daly was highly unstable. Lots of people were fired. These are just facts. Mm-hmm. Lots of people quit, moved to other places. It was not a happy place.
Right.
And so, because it was not a happy place, and because the president had a background in psychology, she thought it would be a good idea to have a couple of psychiatrists come to the college and interview the faculty in focus groups. Mm. And I thought, wait a minute, that does not go down well with me. I mean, to have a psychiatrist in a room evaluating me at work, I thought, it crossed over some kind of Bill of Rights, mm-hmm. fundamental civil liberties that I was not willing to cross. And so I felt that I was in the uncomfortable position of having to refuse to do what the president of the college was asking me to do. Mm. And I wrote a memo to my chair, and I said, in a sense, what Martin Luther said to the Catholic Church: "Here I stand. I will not go. I will not go there." Right. I drew my line in the sand. And like I say, it was an unpleasant moment for me. I never did get interviewed by that team of psychiatrists. They went on to find that they thought there was a problem with the president, and the report was, shall we say, mysteriously disappeared. So I refused to participate in a psychiatric process that ended up nailing the president, which disappeared. Right. It was the Britain Report. That was the name of it. I remember the name. That was a husband and wife psychiatric team, the Britons. Wow. And they evaluated the campus, the faculty, the president, and they said, "The problem's with you, President." Wow. And that's public record. I can say that, and I'm not in trouble. Good. I'll look you in the eye, camera, and I'll just say that's the facts. That's the facts.
Now, what year was that?
Oh my gosh. Let's see, my good friend Denise Larson was still here. She and I worked on the student newspaper. She was advisor over Prescott. She was still here when that happened. She was one of the people who left because she thought the institution was soul sick, to quote the words of Meg O'Brien character in Joe versus the Volcano. She left. But I want to say that was mid-90s.
And 90s.
Yeah.
You know,
Till mid to late 90s was when the Britain report thing came down, when the psychiatrists were here.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, now, going back to the student population, we've discussed, you know, the students are ever so hardworking as they were, you know, when you first came to the college. You said a lot that has changed, though, is the technology. And I know you teach the course Technology and Human Values. Was that course available back when you first started?
It was, but it was available initially only as a 1-hour connections course. Along with the AIDS class, with environmental crises and opportunities, science fiction and the cinema, the Technology and Human Values was a 1-hour connections course. Then I believe it was Professor Govedich and Professor Reisdorfer over in Prescott who made a move to take the 1-hour course and turn it into a 3-hour LSE course, which would then kind of compete with the Western Civ Bank.
Right.
And that's the way it played out. Technology and Human Values became an alternate course, a course students could take along with or instead of Western Civ.
Right.
And that's kind of how that happened. And that development, well, let's see, Steve's been gone now Govedich has been gone for probably about 5 years, so that must have happened about 6-7 years ago. The LSE, when Tech and Human Values went to a 3-hour course.
Now I can imagine it's been quite interesting to watch, you know, the development of not only the curriculum of Technology and Human Values, but just the actual essence of what it does to people, you know?
I mean the technology
Yeah,
itself?
the technology has actually changed drastically since you've been here in 1989.
Absolutely.
And it's just, it must be interesting to just see how it affects humanity, you know?
It's extremely interesting. I wish I had another 100 years to live to see how this all plays out.
Right, right. That's very true.
But here's the thing. Right now is a unique moment in time for teachers and for students. I'm assuming you're in your 20s? Okay. Your generation is the first generation to have lived all 20-something of your years. We call you 20-somethings, right? All 20-something of your years, you've lived as part of the information age revolution. You've lived with computers, you've lived with video games, you've lived with cell phones. Your generation was the first to go beyond TV into the internet and the World Wide Web. And all of you in your generation, all of you have had access, been, you know, fortunate enough to have access to computers,
Right.
And or schools that have them. Your generation is the first wired generation. Right. Totally wired. And we instructors, we're on the other side of this generational divide. We did not grow up wired.
Right.
It's almost a matter of speaking languages. In fact, I read a very interesting article on this very subject, that the instructors are speaking, some of them who haven't become wired or made an effort to try to be as wired as they possibly can be, speak a language that is foreign to the wired generation. And also the way that students learn who've been wired. They may be quite comfortable with multitasking, with doing 3 or 4 things all at once, and my generation did one thing at a time. And so, and there's this divide, this technological divide that separates these two generations, and it's very, very important for teachers who want to remain relevant, and or be able to just communicate with their students, to learn the language, to become comfortable with the technologies themselves, to speak the same language as the students are speaking, and to know that their minds might even work differently because they've had the experience. Some brain researchers even suggest that brainwave patterns and learning has actually physiologically changed because of what you have been through.
Right.
And so that's a very unique moment in education, I want to say, and really sets off my past here from the last couple of years when I first started dealing with your generation.
Right.
So that really has changed.
Now, I know many teachers, well, especially when I was in high school, teachers still had issues with the internet, and they didn't want their students necessarily doing research on the internet. What would you say is the benefits or the drawbacks to both internet research versus textbook research?
Okay. Well, I started teaching online U.S. History 1 and U.S. History 2 a couple of years ago. And one of the benefits that jumps right into my head is the availability of primary source documents, historic primary source. I'm so excited about this. I'm stuttering.
Right.
the availability for history students
Right.
of primary sources in history. You can do an internet search for Richard Heichluth, who wrote something in the late 1500s called Discourse on Western Planting, which was about colonies on the Atlantic seaboard and the advantages of the British for seizing these colonies and taking hold and planting people there. Planting was not about agriculture. In his mind, it was about planting colonies and people. I can tell my students to do a internet Google search for Richard Heichluth's Discourse on Western Planting, and immediately they have access to it.
Right.
So when I teach a group of online students, or I'll even do online research for my live students, and have them create a database of primary sources that I can turn into a listserv and then broadcast to all the students in that class, so the whole class has access to this body of this collection of work that we created as a class,
Right.
as a reference material. That's brilliant. I mean.
Right.
That would have been very tedious in the old days. We did it. We did it.
Right.
And it was a matter of writing research papers and presenting them at in seminar-style classes. But really, in a way, the speed of it is what's so different. And I don't know. I just think that's so marvelous. I just love it. Again, I'd like to live 100 years so I can see where this goes. Another 100 years.
I know. I often think about that, where we're going, what it's going to be like. You know.
Okay, you said, you wanted what are the drawbacks?
Yeah,
Or do you want other advantages, or do you want some drawbacks?
I know personally as a student, we'll talk kind of about the drawbacks.
Okay.
Personally as a student, like you said, we are so used to multitasking, you know, and we almost take advantage of the technologies we have available to us, and we get a little impatient. I know I get a little impatient with textbook research because I'm like, I could just do this in 5 seconds on the internet, you know, so why am I spending my time in a textbook?
I want to say that, I'm thinking, geez, how am I going to defend textbooks? They become so irrelevant.
Right.
We were talking about this in Tech and Human Values today, about, certainly we gain a lot with this technology, but what is it that we might be losing?
Right.
And we were talking about that in terms of human beings, like talking to each other.
Right.
An awful lot of social interaction is going on now online at Facebook and MySpace and places like this, where people have a social connection, but they aren't looking at anybody in the eye. They aren't in the same room with them.
Right.
And we've lost something there. I think it's the same with the book. Now, this may sound awfully archaic, and like I'm a fossil from the 50s, but that's okay. That's what I am. But no, isn't there a physical pleasure in opening a book? And imagine a book that may be 100, 200 years old. I've handled manuscripts. When I did my master's thesis, I went to the rare books library, or rare books section of the University of Michigan Graduate Library. I was doing my research on a topic in 17th century England. I had the privilege of actually opening some of the books that were written in the 1600s in England and physically having them in my hand. I mean, there's a qualitative difference to that experience and reading the same thing online that's light years apart. It's the difference between having this conversation with you in person and having it online in a chat room.
Right.
I would have lost an awful lot. Maybe we lose something with the books too. I ask that as a rhetorical question.
That's very true. No, it's very true. And that's actually in my interpersonal communications course, I am presenting my final project on technology and how it has affected communications. Because what really snapped me into thinking about this was I had to talk to an instructor, and Kyle said, well, why don't you just give him a call? And I said, no, I'll email him. Because I felt uncomfortable calling him, you know? And it just made me think, well, what have we lost through the technologies that we use to communicate? I think it's a lot. You know? Another example of that is you talked about going to Greece and, you know, how I was in New York at the Metropolitan Art Museum, and the things that I saw in my textbook were right in front of me. And I think everyone at some point in their life needs to experience that, experience a world outside of ourselves that can be in front of us, and it almost gives us a connection to our past. You know?
I think what we're talking about here is somewhat philosophical. There are various levels of reality.
Right.
You can experience the painting in the museum.
Right.
You can experience the painting in a book, in a picture, or you can experience the painting online. And there are different levels of reality, and different levels of immediacy connected to each level of reality. And the further away we get from real reality, maybe the more disconnected we are, in a sense, from life and living.
Right.
I don't know. It's a philosophical issue.
Right. And there is something to be said about finding information in 5 seconds on the internet through Google, or taking your time to look in a book and research it, and then the pride you feel from achieving that, whereas, okay, I can do that in 5 seconds on the internet, you know? It's a different feeling.
Absolutely. Another downside to the internet is I think it has deceived some students into thinking that plagiarism is easier than ever, when in fact the opposite is true.
Right.
I've been in the sad position of being an instructor in an online course where somebody has plagiarized from the internet. And I also had a case where a student plagiarized from another student's post that was right above. Somehow there's this misperception or misconception out there that the internet makes such things easier, but what is made easier is also made easier to catch. And that's the hang-up for the student who wants to try that sad avenue of non-learning.
Right. Very much so, non-learning. Now, would you say that plagiarism has increased over the years due to the access to the internet?
My gut reaction is that it's the ability to catch plagiarism has increased. The effectiveness at which instructors can catch plagiarism has increased.
Right.
And I'm not sure that instances of plagiarism has increased. It's just, I think the apprehension of it has increased. So students out there, if you're listening, don't go there. It's not worth it. It's too easy. We know the places that you go.
You're only hurting yourselves. Trust me. It's very true.
It's just not worth it.
It's just not worth it. Run away. Oh my goodness. Let's see.
I rarely talk to the camera so directly.
Yeah, exactly. So, let's talk a little more about internet courses.
Okay.
Are you teaching any this semester?
I'm teaching U.S. History 1 and U.S. History 2.
Oh, okay.
On top of my 4 other preps.
Wow.
I think, yeah. 5 if you include the AIDS class, I think.
And when did you first begin teaching internet courses?
It was about 2 years ago when I taught History 131 for the first time. And then that was in the spring, I think. And then in the fall, I taught History, it was in the fall, I think, I taught History 131. And the next spring, I taught History 132. And now I'm teaching them both at the same time. But I'm finding a certain disadvantage in that. I have so many students that I'm spending too much time sitting down at the computer. So next semester I'm going to cut back to 1 online course in the fall, because I don't think all that sitting is healthy. There again, we're talking about quality of life, quality of experiences. It's attractive to teach online. It seems like it's an easier way to go, but there's no such thing as a technological free lunch.
Right.
Every technological advantage has its drawbacks and consequences, and too much sitting, for me,
Right.
is a down. Is not a downer, it's a negative, not a positive.
Would you say that you have found better ways of teaching online as far as when you started at the beginning and then you realized, oh, that didn't work? And, you know?
Oh, yeah, there have been something, one thing I tried was an idea I heard at a conference on teaching better online. And it was an idea that was suggested to me, and I thought, well, they said this is a good idea at the conference, I'll try it, and it was a total bomb. And the assignment was, find a really bad historical site online. Yeah, really bad information, really biased, really. And to my dismay, students were spending hours and hours and hours trying to find bad information, and they couldn't find what it was or whatever. Maybe I didn't even know what I was looking for, but they struggled with it. And when I realized how much trouble they were having with this, I thought, this is a total waste.
Right.
I'm sorry I tried this, and so I've scratched that from my.
Right.
And I use much more positive approach. I can see the value of such a thing. There is a lot of junk on the internet. There's a lot of historical junk on the internet. I can see the wisdom of the idea of the assignment, but the way I set it up, it just didn't work. I need to try a different setup. Right. One thing I have learned is online, it's easier, it seems, to get students to write, to be able to get to the point where they can write good historical papers backed up with primary source evidence. Because I use discussion boards a lot.
Oh.
And in their very first discussion board, if they come at me with just this opinion about what they've read and they don't back it up with any historical evidence, either secondary or primary, I just hammer them. I say, hey, that's not enough. That doesn't cut it for us.
Right.
And so they get gradually, progressively trained to the point where when it comes time to write their first position paper, they know from experience in these discussion boards that if they're going to say something historical, they better prove it.
Right. That's very good.
And so I want to say that for teaching historical writing, the online format might even be better than in class. Because I spend less time in class talking about primary source backup than I do in those discussion boards. It's very labor intensive though.
Right.
All that one-on-one takes a lot of time.
I can imagine, because in class you don't necessarily get the feedback from the instructor like you get when you're online, you know, because that's your only way of communicating with the student.
Right.
But when you're in class, you know, you listen to the teacher lecture, here's your paper, I grade it, here's your feedback, you know.
Right.
So it's more up to the student, I think, in class to pursue the teacher, to get out of the course and to get out of the teacher's knowledge what they can if they pursue it, because teachers got to lecture, you know.
Yeah, right.
They got to get that information out there.
Right.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
How many other colleagues are still on this campus that have been here since you've been here, or, you know, approximately the same time?
Oh, geez. Dieter, Dr. Bartels and I have been here. He was here when I arrived. Let's see. Jean retired. Oh, Phil retired.
Who was Phil?
Phil Tatum was a business teacher. He and I used to lift weights in the weight room all the time. I miss him terribly. He's my workout buddy.
Right.
He's gone.
Right.
Dieter and Dai Duan.
Oh, yes.
Dai Duan, Dieter, myself. Are we the last of the diehards?
Maybe.
I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. That would be terrible. I think that, well, I know there have been people on staff, like the two guys in the library. They've been here. Larry and Roy have been here since I was here, since I started here. So there have been staff people. Lisa Simpson-Kyle has been here, I think, as long as I have. There's staff people, but the faculty, geez, I hope I'm not forgetting anyone.
Terrence?
Now that's just on the Verde campus.
Right.
Yeah. Terrence, yes.
He's been here 13, I think.
Yeah, I was on the committee that hired Terrence.
Yeah.
So, he came in about that time.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not forgetting anyone, because that would be a terrible slight to my colleagues. And if you're out there, I apologize. But those are the three that pop into my mind right now: Dr. Wong, Dr. Bartels, Dieter, and what was the other one I mentioned? Me.
You?
I'm losing it.
And Jenny, who retired last year.
Yeah.
But she's back and she's still doing stuff, right?
Oh,
still kicking.
She's very much alive and well, and she's doing a lot of writing. She's writing novels.
Oh, neat.
And she's very, very busy writing her novels.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But how much team teaching did you do with Jenny? I know you did a lot.
She and I. Well, I think I started team teaching with Jenny around 1991. Mm-hmm. She and I team taught together, I want to say, for about 16 years, at least. And we developed a real synergy, or there was a very synergistic. Did you ever take a class with the two of us?
No, I've taken one from each of you, but never together.
Well, together we were better, I think, than we were separate.
Yes.
There was this chemistry, this synergy. It was a real show that we put on, and students loved it. I mean, it wasn't adversarial to the point of being obnoxious,
right.
But there was a nice little edge to the relationship and the communication, and it was very lively, very very action oriented,
right?
Fun.
That's neat.
Yeah.
That's neat. Well, I think we are coming to the close. Is there anything that you feel that I've left out that you want to just make sure is said about Yavapai College in your legacy for Yavapai College?
I want to honestly say, and I started to say this earlier when I was talking about the privilege that it is to work with students like yourself. I feel so fortunate to have this job and to have had this career. Somebody wrote a book out there. There was a movie called My Beautiful Career. Mm-hmm. I could use those words to describe my experience here on the Verde campus and at Yavapai College. Sure, there have been the dark moments,
right,
and even some of the darker ones the darkest ones I haven't told you about. And nothing, you're not going to get to know them. No, because we're at the end of our conversation. But even considering all that, I'm so lucky to be able to do what I really want to do. Mm-hmm. And there were like 120 to 130 people who applied for my job when I applied it.
Wow.
People with master's degrees were a dime a dozen. Mm-hmm. And somehow that committee and the way that the politics worked in that situation came together so that I got this job. And I love it. I have loved it all along.
Good.
I'm just so lucky, grateful.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for participating.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it.
All right.
All right.